Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Memorial. Gonna break down what to expect from tomorrow, get you ready to build some DFS lineups out there with some prop slips, and go out there and crush all your exposure for Sunday. But first off, welcome on in wherever you guys are. Cheers. I've got my water over here myself. Go out there, have yourself a Saturday. Today was able to profit for Showdown. Props was also a profitable venture, and played some golf myself. Was able to get the whole round in this time. It made 3 birdies. We won't talk about the score. It did start with an 8, so far from what I wanted in terms of bogeys, but 3 birdies out of 18 holes, especially on a championship golf course, is something that I'll take all day. So hopefully you guys had a solid Saturday yourself and are ready to talk some golf action out here. But before we hop into all the action for Sunday, just want to remind you of the sponsor of this live stream, which of course is our buddies over there at the Ship It Nation. They are your source for all of your DFS needs, whether it's golf or a variety of different other sports. That's why they're the perfect partnership here for this channel, because they cover a lot of what I'm not able to. I'm just one person, somebody that covers golf and football. But if you're somebody curious about basketball, MMA, NHL, MLB, whatever the case may be, they are the people that you guys should be going to. Over there, you can use code Luke10 for a discount off any membership. It helps your boy out, gives you a discount on that membership as well. And it is a site run by some of the best in the industry, if not the best team of all winners out there on a variety of different sports. They've got Tambo, Hoop, a bunch of different contributors that are helping out with various different sports over there. Just a great team. Again, I wouldn't partner with a group that wasn't worthy of having that partnership, and they are the best out there. So check them out if you guys haven't already. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the Ship It Nation crew, but if you're not, make sure to check them out if you haven't already. But let's start it off with a look at the golf course, where the morning wave once again played quote-unquote harder than the PM wave, but I'll say that that was a little bit misleading. The course conditions in the morning were calm, at least till about noon when the winds were kicking up, and they had slightly more receptive conditions. Both of those were expected, things that we talked about yesterday. However, though, the guys going off earlier weren't the best players. They were out of form, guys that struggled days 1 and 2. It was a much more lenient cut line than what we're used to seeing. So you had some guys that were still playing out there on Saturday that would normally not have made it through the weekend. So perhaps that was part of that. Of course, the later starters were all of your leaders because they went off of 2 sums on hole number 1. But I think the added thing to look at here, and really to get a taste of how conditions really played out, would be to look at the ceiling performances, where guys like Sanjay, of course, started over par and teed off in the first few hours of tee times. Colin Morikawa was a little bit later. He started at -2, so I wouldn't classify him as, an early starter by any means. Same thing with Sepp Straka, but players like Victor Perez were in the first half of tee times. Shane Lowry, for sure, with his 2 eagles, was out there in the first half. Even guys like a Sahith Theegala were in the mid-tier of tee times. Jason Day went off early. Of course, Scotty shooting -1 was a PM wave player, but a lot of these -3, -4s were players that teed off in the first few hours of tee time. So if you take a look at the scoring averages over here, you may think that the PM wave actually played easier, but when we're taking a look at the top scorers, a few came late, as you'd expect with those players in form. But to me, and especially just watching the golf coverage, the better conditions were in the first half of play. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if we take a look at the forecast on Sunday, it's pretty much the same situation. The winds kick up as the day goes on. In the morning, it's closer to maybe 10, maybe 12 miles an hour of sustained wind. In the afternoon, it's closer to 16 to 17 miles an hour. In terms of your wind gusts, they go from closer to the mid-teens, higher teens to low 20s, there to about 25 to 28 miles an hour. So both metrics kick up as the day goes on. And of course, with the greens firming out, the course just becoming a little bit harder out there as the day goes on. That makes the golf course harder to go out there and score on. So for yesterday, right, I thought it was a little bit of an edge that you might be able to lean into. And though the scoring average didn't necessarily reflect that, I do think you saw that with some of your ceiling performances. So I don't want to say I want to rinse and repeat what we did yesterday, but it's going to be much of the same. You're going to need players in both waves. You're going to get players in both waves that go low. And the added benefit to taking the earlier starters, like a Lowry today, like a Jason Day, like a Sun JM that went out there and shot -5, is they're lower owned. They're out of form. They're not playing as well over the first now 3 days, right here after Saturday Showdown. And you can usually get them at better ownership numbers, more reasonable numbers. And the same case can be made out there on Sunday. Your guys in the middle to earlier pack of tee times are going to be at the very most about average ownership out there compared to guys around them. Whereas your later starters, the guys that are going off in the last 5, maybe 10 groups, are of course going to be some of your chalk. Let's head over there to the DFS side. We're going to go through this a little bit quicker this time, guys. It's late here. I don't want to keep my neighbors up or anything like that with my yapping. And also, I'm getting a little bit tired, right? Played golf out there all day, watched a lot of golf, so I don't want to be doing this till midnight by any means. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on down there, and we'll talk through some of my top plays. I'll give you an idea of some of the stands I'm taking up top, and then some of the leverage that we're mixing in. So first off, we have Ross down there. What's going on? Scotty is good at golf, says you too. Yeah, that's a very good observation, I'd say. Pretty safe one, right? What's going on? Phil says, Luke, your boy. What's going on, Phil, my boy? He said that post and prop really made you some money today. Yeah, it worked out for me too. There were some close calls, as you always have on the prop side, but was able to get into the profit on the day. Thank you for the underdog slip last night. Hopefully some good props available for tomorrow. Hopefully, yeah. I haven't been able to enter anything myself yet, but we're going to take a look at that at the end. Cashed about 5K thanks to Connors and Keegan. There you go. Good day today. Let's keep it going. Cheers to Sunday. Cheers to that. And Barry says, how about the Dunlap smash call? Yeah, dude, you got it right. What was it the day before, Barry? I'm pretty sure you called another smash play out there for round 2. You got to let us know who you're taking for Sunday. Make it 3 for 3, man. That'd be pretty cool. So let's talk through this. So Scotty Scheffler, we already had a few people mention it, is 9 out of 10 times probably winning this golf tournament. He's playing the kind of golf that we've grown to expect from Scotty Scheffler. I considered fading him. In fact, about 2-3 minutes before I published this spreadsheet, I had him out of my player pool. I was not going to take him out there on Sunday. And then I rethought about it. I was reconsidering it for probably half an hour before I made the decision and threw him back into the player pool. Even if you're only going to take about 50% of them out there for Sunday, I just can't understand fading him. I mean, if you're going to do it, it's a pure ownership thing. He is going to be about 50% projected ownership. But if you're fading Scotty Scheffler, just know what you're getting into, right? This guy, like I said, is almost certainly going to go out there and win this event tomorrow. But for Showdown, that doesn't mean that he's going to be the optimal play. The reason why I was highly considering fading Scotty Scheffler is because of the birdie or better upside. For him to go out there and pay off at $13,000, he's probably going to have to make 5 birdies. Now, I don't think that that's impossible. I think that's well within his range of outcomes. But to say that that is just a given out there for Scotty is, in my opinion, a little bit of a mistake. He could go out there, shoot something like 1-2 under par, win this golf tournament, and that might not be enough at a $13,000 price tag. If he was 10 grand, it'd be a little bit of a different story. If he was a $10,500 player like we had here with Rory, maybe 3 or 4 birdies plus the 13 for winning gets it done out there for a Sunday Showdown slate. I'm not so sure there with that $13,000 price tag. So I'm going to have some Scotty. I'm not going with a full fade by any means, but I'm going to have at least half of my lineups, maybe even slightly more than half my lineups that aren't playing a Scotty Scheffler out there for tomorrow. So I'm tentatively looking at about 40% exposure myself out there to Scotty. So I'm going to have a decent chunk of them, right? Especially if my core outside of Scotty hits. I'm going to make sure that I have shots to go out there and take down a GPP. However, I do see the upside in fading somebody that's going to be 50% owned and, of course, cost $13,000. So if you're going to fade Scotty, not only can you go out there and get some leverage by doing that alone, you can also get action on a lot of this 9-10K range. If you're taking Scotty, normally your second man in is probably a 9K player. It gives you options there with Xander or Rory, right? It's really hard to go Scotty than one of those two. You can start with one of these 2 players and load up on one of those 9K guys as a second man in, or perhaps even go with a triple spend up option with a 10K, a 9, and 8. Maybe it's a 10K and 2 9K players that you're spending up with to start your lineup. Those kind of builds, I think, have quite a bit of upside out there for Sunday. So, of course, the placement points matter. I do think that Scotty wins this golf tournament, but that does not mean that he's going to be the optimal play up top when it comes to PGA DFS. So just know that about Sunday Showdown, right? A winner is not just magically going to be in every single winning lineup. They do have to go out there and get it done from the fantasy side as well, to go out there and pay off those extra 13 fantasy points. A few chasers that you might want to look at. So Scotty Scheffler, in terms of like a plant flag, going out there and planting my flag, he's really the one guy that I'm doing it on. Outside of that, almost the entirety of my player pool is going to be chasers, or guys that are at least aren't that chalky. So Victor Hovland, obviously, with guys getting Scotty, I think people would prefer to take a Xander or a Rory over somebody like Victor Hovland. Well, I've got Hovland at sub 10% ownership. So even if you're going with Scotty as somebody that you're spending with up top, you could take Victor Hovland as a second man in. But even if you're starting with, let's say, a Rory or a Xander as your first man in, he could be your second man in with that kind of build as well, or even that first spend up option that you're getting to. There's a bunch of different ways that I'm going to be using Victor Hovland, but what I like about him is, of course, the birdie or better upside. Had a horrendous round out there for round 3. Made, I think it was like 4 or 5 over par for his last 9 holes. Just not the kind of stuff that you want to see. He had looked so much better after getting back with his old swing coach, Joe Mayo. And I think a lot of people are going to hold that against him now, right? They saw him have that big blow-up round, and a lot of people are going to be hesitant to play him out there Sunday. The one thing we know about Hovland is that he's still going to be aggressive. We know that really all he cares about is getting into contention, that top 5, maybe even winning this golf tournament. And now that he's at -1, let's be honest, he's probably not winning this golf tournament, but at the same time, he's not going to be passive out there, right? He's not going to be protecting a lead there at -1 now. So I like his birdie or better upside. He's the kind of player that's going to take game at pins. He's going to go out there and take some chances. And when you're getting him at sub 10% ownership, it's not about the placement points that we're trying to get with a Big Dick Vic. If you're playing with Rory, it'd be the same thing right there at -2. You're not really going for placement points. It's more so hoping that they can go out there and make 5-6 birdies and get to the optimal lineup that way. So I definitely think they have upside to do that out there on Sunday. And when you're giving me a sub 10% owned player that has the kind of upside that you have with Hovland, that's why I'll take him as a chaser out of all the different chasers that, of course, we could have taken. Hideki also fits a lot of the same boxes. He's a very aggressive player, the kind of guy that is not going to be passive out there and try and protect his score. He's sub 10% owned. I've got him at about 8% projected ownership. At $9,100, he is a rather easy second man in if you're going with somebody like Scotty Scheffler. If you do that, it's a much more balanced approach out there with the rest of your lineup, and you're not handicapping yourself too much when it comes to the salary. If you go 13K and then 10K as your second man in, you're definitely going to have to go down to the 6K range, probably for at least 2 spots. If you go 13K Scotty, then the $9,100 Hideki, you maybe only have to go down there for 1 of your last 4 players. So I like Hideki for that reason. I think the price is pretty soft there. And on top of that, just like Hovland, has a lot of that birdie upside. Keegan Bradley, same thing, more of a bounce back candidate, also sub 10% owned. A lot of what we said about this top 2 players can be copy and pasted out there for Keegan Bradley. But, these sort of guys that didn't have the best round, people just aren't going to use them out there for Sunday. And there's a reason why they were in contention after the first 3 days. And frankly, I'll jump right back on those kind of players as they aren't that far out of contention. I mean, a guy like Hideki, Keegan, just for reference here, guys, in terms of their leaderboard position, let me just sort this real quick here on the other tab. They're tied for 22nd right now. If they gain 2 strokes to the field, that's tied for 14th. If they shoot -3, let's say they gain 3 strokes to the field, that's the top 10 right there. That's the edge of the top 10. If they can move up 3 strokes on the field, these sort of players, they don't look sexy. They didn't have the best round 3. No one's going to use them, right? Because they're over par. And if they have a good round, if they make those 4 or 5 birdies, if they have a relatively clean round when it comes to the bogeys, they might finish top 10 and get those top 10 placement points. So in my opinion, this is probably the best part of the leaderboard to attack. It's not so much in terms of weather conditions, right? I think the earliest starters are probably the best conditions that you could probably get. But guys like this that are at +1, in my opinion, they're not getting enough steam when it comes to the ownership, and they're close enough to the top of the leaderboard where they could do some damage, right? They could crack that top 10, and if they're making all those birdies, that would almost for sure make the optimal. Down here in the 7Ks, I like a Sam Burns, a Tom Kim here. Tom Kim, one of your earliest starters because of one of the worst rounds that I've ever seen him have. But Sam Burns, He's yet to play horrible golf. He's also not really had a good round to this point over the first 3 days. But kind of like yesterday, right, the idea for playing him a moving day is he's a sleeping giant. He's the kind of player that will just randomly go out there and make 5-6 birdies in a row. We've seen it at some really difficult golf courses as well. So if you're giving me him at just anything reasonable in terms of the ownership, I'll get over the field. So I've got him at 12%, maybe not as low owned as some of the other players, but still decently low owned in the grand scheme of things. Not quite the 5.2% that we have here in a Tom Kim, but still a player that's easy enough to get that leverage on. Down here in the 6Ks, two last plays I want to point out. Again, guys, I'm going through this a little bit quicker this time just because of the time of night here. Cameron Young at $6,800. It's a 6K Cam Young. So kind of like Tom Kim, right? You got to look at today's performance, kind of put it to the side and not worry about it. If you're going to play somebody like a Cam Young, I'm willing to do that, especially on a talent like Cam that's just such a high pedigree player, multiple second place finishes out there in tour. He's about 10% owned, so you're not going to get a completely unowned Cam Young. But at the same time, I would rather play a Cam Young that, and here's a couple reasons for it. A Cam Young that's going off early, right? That's going to have better conditions than some of the later starters, than some donkey chalk guy down low that's going to be like 20, 25% owned. So about double the ownership of Cam Young that is just starting with placement points. So let me give you a few examples, by the way, of players like that. Nick Dunlap is about 20% owned. Victor Perez is about 17, 18% owned. Who else? Sungjae Im, right? Even he's going to be much higher owned than what you have here with Cam Young. Give me the player that I think is going to have marginally better conditions. He's not playing as well. We know that over the first 3 rounds. But long-term, Cam Young is a much better player than every other player that we mentioned, including Sungjae Im, right? Cam Young is a better player than Sungjae Im over the last few years. Why not take a shot on him going off early? I mean, obviously, the worry here is the motivation, right? Him going out there and just not caring. But what if he does care? What if he starts with a birdie or two, gets a little bit of hope out there in his first 4 or 5 holes? Then Cam Young could go out there and break the slate out there with a 4 or 5 under par round. So you saw from a few guys today, if anyone's going to do it, I would put my money behind a guy who's just a better player than all the other guys priced around him. And then Cam Davis, I'm also playing at $6,400. Another guy that I played for round 3 that didn't pan out, but I'll go right back to him now that he's still low owned and still gives us a bunch of salary savings from that perspective. So these earlier tee times, they're always going to be nasty plays, but they're the sort of guys that I'm using for my leverage. If I'm going to start with a Scotty, maybe even make my second man in somebody with some ownership. So just because all the guys we pointed out here, right, are super low owned, like sub 10% owned guys, doesn't mean that I'm only playing those sort of players. I'm going to have guys that I'm using as a second man in, even with the Scotty at about 50% ownership, that are going to be 15, 20% up there in the 8, 9K range. If that's going to be the case, I can't be taking chalk down there in the 6s and 7s. My last 3, 4 spots have to be spots that I'm getting different with, which is why I'm taking so many of these pivots, which is why I pointed out so many of them as we went through this live stream. So that's it for the player pool. That's it for my exposure. That's how I'm handling it out there for Sunday. We're not going to build a lineup together. I'm just going to go over any of your last second questions when it comes to DFS. And that's going to be it for that side. Like I said, just moving things a little bit quicker this time around. And let's see what we got in terms of questions. Is it okay to fade Scheffler? Absolutely is okay. Would I recommend it? If you're willing to take that kind of shot, if you do, though, you're going to have a lot more flexibility to play chalk elsewhere. And he does have to make probably like 5 birdies, I'd say, Derek. So, yeah, he normally does make a lot of birdies. So if anyone's going to do it, right, Scotty's capable, but he does have to come through in some sort out there from fantasy points. Let's see. So you were close to 50K, you said, Tater Tot. We ended up with $750. Hey, $750 doesn't suck, though. So congrats to you. That's pretty sweet. 50K would have been really nice, though. So let's try and get you that for Sunday, huh? Rami says, Fitzpatrick and Fleetwood combo a bad idea? I don't think it's a bad idea at all. It would be leveraged. I don't think either one is overly chalky. Now, if that's your first and second man in, which I'm guessing it would be with that kind of build, you're probably going pretty balanced, right? You're not going to have to go down to the 6K range with one of your players. I kind of like that idea a lot, Rami. It's leveraged. You're getting different to the field for sure. And I like the idea of a balanced build because a lot of people are going to take Scotty and then drop down. So from the lineup construction perspective, Rami, that's actually going to get you different to the field. Whereas for a lot of main slates, that wouldn't really be the case, right? If you don't have a Scotty in the field, a lot of times that sort of lineup construction is the most popular one that we have. But because of everyone wanting to jam in the guy 4 strokes ahead, world number 1, Scotty Scheffler, that is going to actually be the unique build. So I kind of like that, actually. And whether it's those two or whether it's somebody else, right? You're going to keep smashing Scotty under fairways. I could not blame you for that. I think that makes sense. Please continue to sell Dunlop. Much appreciated. I don't think you're talking to me because I'm not somebody that sells them that often. I've played them a lot this week. I'm not playing them for Sunday, so I don't know who you're talking to, Leslie. I'm fading them for Sunday. So you seem a little bit confused, Leslie. You seem like the kind of hater that comes into like a live chat is like, oh, sell them on this guy so I can go out there and fade them and make all kinds of money. You're an entitled prick, and I'm going to send you on your way. I'm going to send you to Bandland Monday. I just don't need you around here. I've seen your type before. You think you're so smart out there with your lineups. In reality, you're like a 75 IQ dumb fuck that has a room temperature IQ that thinks he knows something. So I'll send you on your way. I'll let you have some fun. It seems like that's what you wanted anyways, your attention. So there you go. You got your attention, buddy. You immature fuck. What's going on, Ryan? Sep's 3.5 bogey line is free again on Underdog. You're saying under 3.5 is free? I was looking at his over, buddy, so I don't know if I'd call it free. Man, I'll just leave it there. I definitely wouldn't call it free. Max says, thoughts on Nick Taylor at 6,100? He's super cheap. So I'm playing him out there in my lineups. It's mostly the price tag and then just quality of player. He's maybe not the best course fit for a long, demanding track like Memorial, but he is just a better player than the price tag, right? He should probably be at least $6,600. You know, he's 6,100. So, I mean, it's not that much different, but yeah, I do like him. In general, is 2 guys already in the top 10 a good strategy and then getting funky with the other 4? It depends on the slate, Tater. A lot of that depends on if you're playing somebody like Scotty and locking him into every single lineup. If you are locking Scotty, maybe it's 2 or 3 that you're taking up top. If you're not locking somebody, then yeah, 2-4 is usually a pretty good guideline. Out here for this slate, I could see playing 3 guys at the top, especially if you're going Scotty and then 2 guys that maybe aren't as mega chalky out there with your next 2. But I think a 2-4 is a good general guideline. Some slates, when the placement points mean a little bit more. So US Open next week, Sunday Showdown, maybe it will be 3 for me in a few lineups because the placement points at a US Open this week, Memorial normally plays harder than what we're getting this week. So normally I'd say that you'd really want to worry about the placement points for Sunday tomorrow, but maybe not so much this time around. Next week at the US Open, you might want 3 guys up top. All right, let's talk some props now. If you guys have any DFS questions, you can still throw them down in the chat. I'll go over them at any point. But now we're going to shift our focus over there to the prop side. So let me go ahead, bring up my prop averages onto the sheet here so you guys can see that. Go ahead, smash like button if you guys haven't already. That is the only thing I ask from you guys. You can feel free to ask me whatever questions that you have. But yeah, the only thing I ask from you is that you go ahead and smash that like button for me. So if you guys haven't already done that, go ahead and do that before you hop on out of here. And let's go out there and have ourselves a Sunday. So I've got these averages up. Let me go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And let's hop into the Draftkings and Underdog side here. So your averages for round 3 were very similar to what we had for round 2. So frankly, the only real big difference was greens, where it went up about 1 green per round. I'd imagine a lot of that is talent level, right? Getting the really out of form players out of the bunch. Part of it may have also been pin locations, which for round 3 seemed to lead to a little bit more of a green and regulation kind of spell. There were a lot of very risky pin locations that they were using out there for round 3. And the announcers were saying that a lot of players would probably try and use slopes, just hit it to the center of greens, and then try and feed it off of it. So it might have been quality of player. Maybe it was the pin setup like the ESPN Plus people were trying to say. But the rest of the metrics here, whether it's birdies, bogeys, fairways, etc., they moved a little bit marginally in one direction or the other, but they're pretty much spot in line with what we had for round 2. So really not that much to note from the stat averages perspective, maybe outside of the greens being slightly easier to hit. But what I want to note right off the bat here, and I guess I probably should have mentioned this when we were talking about DFS, but it's not as important out there for that. These pin locations are absolutely brutal. I went through them before. I went through them with the slopes, everything like that. These pin locations are infamously difficult at Memorial. And just to, I guess, give you some perspective here, guys, if we go to the Memorial, and we did this the other day, right? We went through some of the scoring averages throughout the years. Tell me the one thing that you notice about this golf course. If we look at these averages, right? Sunday, I guess I'll just mention it because I don't want you guys to just be like fishing around looking at stats. Just take a look at the Sunday scoring averages, okay? Sunday this year, plus 2.97. The year before that, plus 2.22, and that was the hardest round that year. Year before that, right, was the hardest round as well, right, when it was like 3 over par. Year before that, plus 1.1. It was the second hardest round. So round 3 played a little bit harder. Part of that was weather-based. 2020, this was the first year after renovation. Round 4 played 4 strokes over par. Now, anytime before that would be before they went out there and ripped up the golf course and changed it and whatnot. But what you've seen since then is that every single year but one, right? The one year where it wasn't the hardest round, it was the second hardest round that we had, right? It played a whole like 1.1 strokes over par. I would expect that with the winds kind of kicking up, if you're just joining us, the winds are going to kick up a little bit out there on Sunday as well. I think this golf course is going to be unbelievably difficult. I think that you're going to see the green average go down quite a bit, probably go down to like that 9 per round that we had out there for round 2. Your stroke average would not surprise me if it was a whole 2 strokes over par. Your bogey average is probably going to be like 4.5 per round. Your birdie average probably stays around the same. It's probably like 3.2 per round. I don't think that one's going to move all that much, but I think you're going to see more bogeys. I think you're going to see a much higher scoring average. And I think in general, fairways and greens, because the course is just going to continue to firm out, are just going to be harder to come by. So I know we had somebody saying that the SEP under on bogeys was going to be free. I vehemently disagree with that. If you're a late tee time, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Colin Morikawa. I don't care if you're Scotty Scheffler going off the leader, world number 1. If you're at 3.5 bogeys, he's at 2 bogeys, by the way, like 2.5 bogeys. You're not free to go under that sort of line. This golf course is going to play like 2-3 strokes over par. Your average player is going to make like 4.5, 5 bogeys tomorrow. I'd be very hesitant before going out there and entering any sort of positive stance play. In fact, there's a really good chance that like 60-70% of my exposure out there for Sunday are fades on players, right? Stances, whether it's an over on strokes and under on birdies that I'm taking on a player, just because I know how infamously difficult this golf course typically is on Sundays. And I know that with the winds up, the course getting firmer, that this place is likely to be extremely difficult. And just to show you guys what it looked like on Sunday last year, these last holes, 0.52 over par. 0.54 over par out there for hole 18. This golf course was likely a little bit firmer than we're going to see tomorrow. So that's why I don't think it's going to play a whole 3 strokes over par. I think probably closer to 2 over par is a little bit more realistic. But this is something not to fuck around with. I mean, if you're a player out there playing tomorrow, just hold on. Shoot something like even par, and you're going to gain a significant amount of strokes to the field. That's the kind of day that we have out there for Sunday. So when we're looking at some of the props over here, the main prop that I think I'm almost for sure going to enter is this under on Scotty Scheffler birdies. At 4.5 birdies, I don't think we have any lines that we can compare to, but I don't think he's going to have any incentive to make 5 birdies. I don't think anyone's really going to chase him down with the score just because of how hard I'm expecting it to play. And if nobody's chasing him down, then what incentive does he have to try and make all those birdies? So if we go over here on to Caesars, you'll see that he's minus 175 for the under at 4.5. Now, I don't think that FanDuel has any odds up to compare to yet, but if they did, he would probably be the same kind of thing for an under. You can see over here in DraftKings, they don't have any birdie lines up either. So that's the only data point we have to compare to, but that's really the only prop that I've been looking at so far. I actually mentioned that Sep one before. I was looking at overs on bogeys. He was one of the players that I was considering just because he's going off so late. Now, I didn't take it because he is playing so well this week, but maybe we could fade his strokes. So he's at 73.5 over here, and he is juiced a little bit under. Adam Hadman is minus 140 over. So maybe we could fade that. I'm going to go over here to Caesars and see what his line is for strokes over here. Let's see, round scores. So Sep is minus 130 under. Okay. I tend to kind of agree with that. But yeah, Adam Hadman is minus 145 over. So I'm tempted to go over here and potentially take his over on strokes because it is juiced in that direction. I ideally would want to take this bogeys or worse a little bit more than what we have with his strokes line. The issue is that it has this 0.9x multiplier. So perhaps we don't go that direction. I just don't love the payout out there in that combination. The other prop I was looking at was, you see, I had that Sep under on greens regulation. I was looking at that, but Sep struck under on fairways, and they don't have his fairway prop posted over here. He has gone 13, 12, and 12 on hitting fairways, but he's at 11 fairways for projection on Underdog, and that just feels way too high in my opinion. So let me go ahead and refresh this. I'll scroll down to the bottom so you guys can see it. But yeah, they have Sepp Straka at 11 fairways. I'm not certain if I'm going to go with this combination quite yet, but this is what I was looking at before I got onto the live stream here. Let's see. Let's go over to PrizePicks. They had a very similar board in terms of pricing. There really wasn't that much that was different between the two sites. So a lot of the guys, strokes-wise, are at the same, if not close to the same number. I'd say this board might be like 0.5 higher on some of the players that we have available. If we go over to greens regulation and fairways hit, you'll see that it's also a lot of the same kind of numbers. So if anything, I'm probably looking at fades for most players. I think the better site as of right now is probably on the Underdog side, but on PrizePicks, there's going to be some hanging pieces of value as well. Just to give you guys an idea of some of these birdie props, actually, I haven't looked at these yet myself, but I'm assuming we might have some unders at 3.5 that could be some sportsbook value. So just to go through these here, where's Justin Thomas? Do we have his line on here? So no JT line, but guys like J Day are minus 145 at 3.5. Tommy Fleetwood's minus 145. Matt Fitzpatrick minus 145 for the under at 3.5. Again, we don't have a line to compare to for Justin Thomas, but some of these guys at 3.5 birdies, you'd have to think you might want to take for an under. Like this Tony Finau, for example, if you're comparing it to the Caesars line, he's minus 145 for the under at 3.5 birdies. So that could potentially be a look over there on PrizePicks. If you're going to look at this prop that I had in the shopping cart before, the Sepp Straka under on greens, if I think the green average is going to be below 10 out there for the field, Sepp Straka is about a field average green regulation player in this field, then why not take his under? Of course, he's up there in the top 3 at this stage. He's playing very well this week. That's why he's gone over this in all 4 rounds or all 3 rounds so far. Same thing with his driving accuracy. That's likely why, right? He's in the top 3. But to say that that's going to 100% continue on Sunday is, I think, a little bit of I don't want to say like a stretch, but it's definitely asking quite a bit. So I am going to hop on out of here for the prop side, guys. Hopefully that brainstorming gives you an idea of what to do for my exposure and when I actually end up entering for tomorrow. Make sure to check out the Patreon. On there, of course, right, is where I'm posting all of my projections, my player poll, everything that you saw blacked out over there for the DFS side is posted over there in the Patreon, and all the different prop slips that I'm entering, the stat averages, forecast, all the reasoning for all the slips that I'm taking is, of course, posted over there as well. So if you want to tail my exposure out there for Sunday, make sure to check out the Patreon. The last thing we're going to look at before I call this stream to an end is the pick 6 board real quickly, which I'm going to catch up on chat. Then we'll look at pick 6. Then we're going to hop on out of here. Like I said, I got to get going. So only so much time. Should we put Denny's course history to bed? That's what I did, Steven. I thought this was coming. He's the kind of guy that I didn't even see the course fit. I didn't really even understand why he played the course well. So, yeah, for sure. I actually already did it before we started. Who's a good bounce back guy? If you're going to go for a bounce back guy, I gave you a bunch throughout the live stream. If I had to just pick one for you, though, because I kind of know that's what you're looking for here, Victor Hovland. Go whole out Hovland out there on Sunday. I'm expecting that. Seems like you had a pretty shitty day. You paired him with Cole and Hodges. That happens, man. Sometimes you're going to have bad combinations of players. Today, I had plenty of lineups that had great guys that went off with stinkers that were mixed in. That's a part of playing PGA DFS. There's 6 spots for a reason. And just because you get a few spots right doesn't guarantee you shit. You got one part of the puzzle right? If you're going to take down a GPP, you're going to have the nuts. So I hate to say it. It's tough love, I guess, man, but suck it up. That's PGA DFS for you. If you're not perfect, you're not going to cash out shit. They're not just going to hand it to you. You're playing against 40, 50,000 other entries. What do you think? They're just going to hand you a big payout for doing nothing? You've got to earn it, my man. So suck it up, I guess, right? Figure it out and be better next time. That's what I would say. Ross says, do I have a better day putting than Corey Connors? Yeah, I didn't see him putting out there. I can imagine, though. He's not the best putter. I made a bunch of putts for birdies, but everything else I didn't make. I mean, I was missing a bunch. I'm like 8 to 10 feet for bogey, for double bogey at times. I was missing from like 8 to 10 feet. What I was doing, though, Ross, is every time I hit a decent iron shot, which was like the 10, 15 feet, I made all 3 of them. So decent putting day, I guess. I made the putts when it mattered, but yeah, I suck at putting, dude. I'm kind of like Coco. I look like I'm blind out there when I'm putting. Seppenly has 3 total bogeys all tournaments. Yeah, dude, that's how he's done for 3 days. That's why he's in 3rd place. He's not the 3rd best player of this golf tournament. He's probably like number 40 out of the 70 players that you have. There are going to be guys like Adam Hadman, for example, right? Adam Hadman has broken par the first 3 days. Do you know what his line is on PrizePicks on Underdog out there for Sunday? 73.5 strokes, right? They've got him at 1.5 over par. First 3 days, decent data point. You're going to want to at least somewhat consider the data point. It is not the end all be all. In fact, it's just a little bit of a data point to look at, right? If you're just considering that and using that as the gospel for Sunday, you're not going to have a very good time with props. I can just tell you that that's how the sports books leverage casual bettors, right? They know that that's what a lot of people will do for their quote unquote research. And it's not good research at all. I would warn against that for sure. Who is going to surge into the top 10? The that'd be Hovland. Fade set 11 fairways. That's what I was thinking, man. I am typically tater tot, a high single digit handicap. 7.4 index is technically what I am right now, but I'm playing much worse than that. I don't have a lot of rounds in over the last 6 months. So that's the issue with that. It's not the most up-to-date number. And today I raised that index. It went up significantly after today. Rami says, Tom Kim makes the top 20. I don't really have a take on that. I'll give you Data Golf's take out there on Tom Kim. So Tom Kim to make the top 20, absolutely not. He's +7, right? The top 20 for him is 6 shots away. Yeah, he's not making the top 20, man. That's not happening. Guy who dominated Underdog pool today almost took all the early morning starters. Yeah, exactly, right? We talked about that yesterday, right? In terms of the weather edge. Makes perfect sense to me, right? That's what we're doing for Sunday. That's why I'm mixing in so many of the earlier starters. They're later starters. And if you're just joining us, Eric, you probably weren't here for that section of the video. The scoring average earlier was technically harder than the afternoon. Like if you just break it down 50-50, take a look at the first half versus the second half. So you would think that the morning was quote unquote harder. That's just not true, right? A lot of that was talent level. It's form of the earlier guys. They're just not as good as the later starters. If we sort this by ceiling score, actually see who went out there and had the biggest rounds, you're 100% correct, right? Sun GM, morning starter. You had guys like Colin Sepstraka that went off a little bit later, but Shane Lowry, guys like Jason Day went off early. Nick Dunlop went off mid-starter. Players a little bit further down, a lot of your -1 even pars that made 5-6 birdies were players that went off early. That's obviously you're going to see that happen again. I think that you can easily expect that same kind of dynamic there. Yeah, have a great night. You too, man. Hadman for round 4. Yeah, hey, Barry has been on a heater, guys. So if he's calling out somebody down there in the live chat, pay attention. That's all I'll say there. And yeah, you just showed up. Yeah, I kind of figured that based on your comment. Yeah, it's we're expecting the same kind of thing for Sunday, essentially. I think the morning starters will have the easier conditions, but if you go back here and check the scoring average after the fact, it's likely going to say that it played harder, right, per the data golf stuff, just know that it's, if we sort this by score, it's the slappies down here that are plus 10, plus 8, like a Cam Young, Griot, Quaven, for example, that heavily inflate that average. So that's all I've got, guys. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for your Sunday action. Best of luck out there with your lineups, any prop slips that you guys are entering. And let's go out there and finish this week strong. Again, make sure you guys check out the Ship It Nation for all of your PGA DFS needs. And for all of my exposure out there on Sunday, check out my Patreon page for the spreadsheet over there on the DFS side. And of course, for all my prop exposure, check out the prop tier over there on the Patreon. That's all I've got. Like I said, appreciate the support here on the channel. Smash the like button if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come, which, hey, we got the US Open coming. Big week. Got all the world's best playing, or at least most of them, with the guys coming over from Live. So let's take advantage. Let's make it a good one. I might still go up there to watch the US Open in person, which I've been planning on it for a while. There's been a few things that have come up that might keep me from heading up there, but you'll know tomorrow. I'll let you guys know, or at the very latest by Monday, whether I'm going to be there up there at Pinehurst. I'm hoping to be. That'd be pretty fun and pretty stoked to be, but we'll have to see. So looking forward to that. I'll let you guys know about that, and let's have ourselves a week.